They are the most powerful weapons ever created, capable of ending wars and, some fear, ending humanity itself. From the secretive beginnings of the Manhattan Project to Cold War arms races and modern-day political tensions, the story of nuclear weapons is one of power, destruction, and the constant battle between deterrence and annihilation. But how did we get here? How did nuclear weapons shape the world as we know it today? This is the timeline of nuclear weapons, how they changed warfare, geopolitics, and the threat they pose to our very existence. The journey to nuclear weapons began in 1938, when German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann discovered nuclear fission, the process by which an atomic nucleus splits and releases vast amounts of energy. Soon after, in 1939, Austrian physicists Lise Meitner and Otto Frisch explained how this discovery could be used to create a chain reaction, potentially leading to an explosive device. The scientific community realized that this discovery could have profound and terrifying implications. At the time, the world was on the brink of World War II, and scientists feared that Nazi Germany might weaponize this newfound knowledge. The possibility of an atomic bomb was no longer a theoretical concept. It was a looming reality, and the race to harness nuclear power had begun. Britain and the United States began discussing countermeasures, and soon efforts were underway to explore whether a nuclear bomb could be created before Germany had the chance to. As World War II raged on, and still fearful that Nazi Germany might develop a nuclear weapon, the United States launched the Manhattan Project in August of 1942. Led by J. Robert Oppenheimer, this top-secret effort brought together the best scientific minds in the world to create the first atomic bomb. The project cost nearly $2 billion, which translates to over $30 billion today, and employed more than 130,000 people across multiple locations, including Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Hanford. The scope of the project was unprecedented. Scientists worked under immense pressure and secrecy, knowing that failure could signal victory for the enemy. The Chicago Pile 1 experiment, conducted in Chicago in December of 1942, proved that a nuclear chain reaction was sustainable. This breakthrough solidified the feasibility of an atomic bomb. While German nuclear efforts were stalling, the Manhattan Project continued to develop two types of bombs: a uranium-based design codenamed Little Boy, and a more complex plutonium-based bomb codenamed Fat Man. On July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, the world truly entered the nuclear age. Codenamed Trinity, the test was the first successful detonation of an atomic bomb. The explosion was equivalent to 25 kilotons of TNT. The resulting mushroom cloud rose 38,000 feet into the sky and could be seen from over 280 miles away. Scientists watched in awe and horror. Some feared the detonation might ignite the atmosphere itself. Others immediately understood that warfare had changed forever. As Oppenheimer witnessed the blast, he famously recalled words from a Hindu scripture, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The successful test ensured that nuclear weapons would soon be deployed in combat. The United States, believing a swift end to the war was necessary to prevent greater loss of life, prepared to use its new superweapon against Japan. Less than a month later, nuclear weapons were used in war for the first, and so far only, time. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber named Enola Gay dropped Little Boy, a 15-kiloton uranium bomb, on Hiroshima. The impact was instantaneous. 80,000 people were killed immediately, with tens of thousands more succumbing to injuries and radiation sickness in the following months. 3 days later, on August 9th, a 21-kiloton plutonium bomb, Fat Man, was dropped by the B-29 bomber Bockscar on Nagasaki, killing at least 70,000 people. The destruction was unparalleled. Those who survived faced long-term radiation poisoning, severe burns, and an uncertain future. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, marking the end of their participation in World War II. By the end of the year, the death toll in Japan exceeded 200,000. These bombings ushered in a new era, one where humanity had to reckon with the power of atomic devastation. The dawn of the Cold War saw the rapid increase of nuclear weapons. In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb, RDS-1, triggering an arms race between the US and the USSR. Both nations escalated their nuclear programs, developing increasingly destructive weapons, including the hydrogen bomb, which was over 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Japan. By the 1960s, the world's nuclear stockpile had grown into the tens of thousands, with both superpowers maintaining vast arsenals of weapons. The principle of mutually assured destruction ensured that a nuclear war would mean total annihilation, leading to a fragile balance of power. Entire strategies such as the Strategic Defense Initiative, a proposed U.S. missile defense system, were devised to prepare for a possible nuclear conflict. The world came closest to nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. When the U.S. discovered Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, President John F. Kennedy demanded their removal. For 13 tense days, the world held its breath as the two superpowers stood on the brink of catastrophe. American warships blockaded Cuba to prevent more Soviet missile shipments, while both nations prepared their nuclear arsenals for a potential exchange. Behind the scenes, diplomatic negotiations were tense. U.S. officials debated military intervention. Some within the Kennedy administration pushed for an immediate airstrike on Cuba. However, Kennedy, along with his advisors, understood the devastating consequences of an all-out nuclear war, and instead, through back-channel communications, struck a deal. The Soviets would withdraw their nuclear missiles from Cuba in exchange for the U.S. publicly declaring that it would not invade Cuba and secretly agreeing to remove its nuclear missiles from Turkey. The crisis ended on October 28, 1962, when the Soviet Union announced that their missiles would be dismantled. Following the crisis, both superpowers recognized the urgent need for de-escalation, resulting in the establishment of the Moscow-Washington Hotline and the eventual signing of the Limited Test Ban Treaty in 1963, which prohibited nuclear tests in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. Realizing the catastrophic potential of nuclear war, nations sought ways to further limit proliferation. In 1968, the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, was signed, aiming to prevent new countries from developing nuclear weapons. The treaty was a landmark agreement, with 191 nations signing on, making it one of the most widely accepted arms control agreements in history. However, some countries, including India, Pakistan, and Israel, refused to sign, arguing that the treaty was unfair by allowing some nations to retain nuclear weapons while prohibiting others from acquiring them. Over the following decades, further arms reduction treaties built upon the principles of the NPT. These helped reduce the number of nuclear warheads, and whilst the end of the Cold War in 1996 brought further hope for disarmament, political tensions remain. Despite those decades of arms control efforts, nuclear threats persist. 9 countries possess nuclear weapons, and global stockpiles remain high. North Korea, despite international sanctions, has developed nuclear capabilities and conducted multiple nuclear tests, while the Iranian nuclear program also remains a contentious issue, with world powers struggling to enforce agreements that limit its ability to enrich uranium for weapons use. Meanwhile, Russia, the US, and China continue modernizing their arsenals. With close to 13,000 nuclear warheads now in existence, the potential for nuclear conflict remains an ever-present danger. The future of nuclear arms control is uncertain. While disarmament advocates push for the complete abolition of nuclear weapons, others argue that deterrence remains a necessary safeguard in an unstable world. One thing remains clear: as long as nuclear weapons exist, so too will the need for vigilance, diplomacy, and international cooperation to prevent their use. And then there's the advancements in technology. New threats and questions arise. Could artificial intelligence make nuclear war more likely? Are missile defense systems susceptible to cyber attacks? And will nations ever agree to complete nuclear disarmament? These questions will define the future of nuclear weapons and perhaps the fate of humanity itself. For nearly a century, nuclear weapons have shaped our world. As we look into the future, one question remains. Will we continue down the path of deterrence, or will the world finally rid itself of these ultimate weapons? What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world around us.